There's a question that still haunts this city. What if the thing that kept you safe was also the killer's invitation? It wasn't a scream that woke them. It was jazz. Soft at first, like a record spinning far away. Then louder, closer, pulling them from sleep like a whisper through the bones. March 19th, 1919. A Tuesday. A heat wave clung to New Orleans like a fever. And somewhere, beyond the gas lamps and alley fog, someone was choosing who would die next. "Don't worry," Anthony said, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. "He only kills the ones who don't play music." And just like that, I believed him. Because the truth was worse. We were the Manfor family. Grocers. Immigrants. Survivors of storms and debt. But not this. That night, the house was stifling. Ceiling fan broken. Baby Sarah asleep in her crib. I could hear her soft breath even through the hallway. The walls were thin, but they didn't muffle the sound of footsteps inside our kitchen. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Anthony paused, then forced a smile. "Probably the neighbor's cat. Go back to bed." But I knew the cat didn't drag furniture. Weeks earlier, the newspapers called him the Axeman, a ghost with a blade, breaking into homes through panels or doors, leaving no fingerprints, just bodies and wood shavings on the floor. Joseph Maggio, slaughtered in bed beside his wife, their throats carved open, their heads bashed in, with an axe he left behind. "He never takes his weapon," my sister whispered at church. "It's like he wants them to find it, like he's proud." And then the letter came, March 13th, 6 days before he came to us. Typed, anonymous, published in the Times-Picayune. "Esteemed mortal of New Orleans, they have never caught me and they never will. I am not a human being but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. I shall visit your city again on the night of March 19th, 1919. I will pass over all homes in which a jazz band is playing. If you value your lives, play jazz." We laughed when we read it, called it a prank. But deep down, we didn't want to be wrong. So that night, Anthony brought out the gramophone, spinning King Oliver, slow and mournful. And we waited. The music played, but so did something else. A creak by the pantry, the hiss of hot metal cooling, the stench of sweat and rust. And then, the softest knock, from inside the wall. My heart pounded like the drumline in a funeral march. I grabbed baby Sarah, wrapped her in blankets. But Anthony, he walked toward the sound, still holding the cigarette, still pretending. "Don't," I whispered. "Please don't open it." But he already had. And behind the pantry door, nothing, just silence, until he turned around. And then something moved behind him. The blade didn't scream. It whispered. And when he fell, his mouth opened, but no sound came out. The music kept playing. So loud now, I couldn't hear my own sobs. I ran, clutching Sarah, blood on my nightgown, through the alleys and into the street. Someone saw me, called a patrol. Screams, sirens, but no footprints, no sign of forced entry. And the axe was still warm. They said the jazz saved me. But all I remember is the sound of breathing from the shadows. As I fled, he watched us. He listened. He waited until the music drowned the screams. And that was just the beginning. The Axeman didn't just kill. He orchestrated terror, one note at a time. What if the devil didn't come with horns, but with jazz? What if salvation was a lie, and the song was his signal? The next night, a girl named Clara Bienvenue stood at her window, watching shadows crawl across the cobblestones. She was 16, worked the perfume counter at Maison Blanche, told her mama she didn't believe in ghosts, until the fires came. Mama said to light the candles. That music would keep him away. But I heard something else, a scraping under the floorboards. Clara lived in the 7th Ward, near Elysian Fields, a neighborhood stitched with jazz halls, cigarette smoke, and secrets the city buried under bourbon and brass. But that week, even the music sounded afraid. 2 nights earlier, March 17th, the newsboys shouted as they ran through the quarter. Another body found. Jazz keeps you safe. Play or perish. Clara's brother, Jules, joked it was just hysteria, that the letter in the paper was a hoax. But when a woman was found near Esplanade, skull split wide like a cracked melon, with her own saxophone driven through her ribs, the joke stopped. It's not music he wants, Jules muttered. It's a show. That night, their father dragged an old phonograph from the attic. The record scratched, warped with age, but still played something ragged and desperate. As the clarinet screeched, Clara felt it again, that strange stillness in the air, like the silence that comes after a scream. She tried to sleep, but the dream found her first. A man, standing in firelight, eyes burning brighter than the flames, hat low, axe glinting, and behind him, a jazz band played a dirge in reverse, notes unraveling, melodies broken. He smiled and danced. He spun in circles, dragging blood through the ashes like paint. I couldn't wake up. I think I wasn't supposed to. 3:12 a.m., March 19th. She woke to screaming and heat, blistering. The walls flickered red. Smoke rolled through the hallway. The record had stopped spinning, but Clara could still hear music, not from inside the house, from outside, a trumpet, playing exactly what she'd heard in her dream. She crawled through the kitchen, the fire already swallowing the curtains, ash falling like black snow. That's when she saw him, at the end of the hallway, still, silent. The axe hung from his hand. No mask, just shadow where his face should be. He didn't run, didn't chase her. He just tilted his head and began to dance. Clara screamed, kicked through the back door, rolled down the stairs and into the alley. By the time help came, her house was gone. So was her family. The coroner found no accelerants, no evidence of electrical failure, but a single note was nailed to the charred doorframe. She heard the music, but she still didn't dance. Detectives were baffled. No one saw anyone enter the property. No prints, no forced entry. But the neighbors? They said they saw a man, in a dark coat and hat, glide through the alley like smoke. And behind him, footsteps that didn't match his pace. Clara couldn't speak for days. When she did, she only whispered one thing. He danced in the flames. He wasn't alone. The city panicked. By morning, every jazz shop was sold out. Bars stayed open through the night. Record stores played non-stop tunes through open windows. People weren't trying to survive. They were trying to be heard. But not everyone believed. Some thought the Axeman was a myth, a killer hiding behind theater. Others, they swore he wasn't human, that he moved like fog, and killed like a story that rewrote itself each time it was told. What if the fire wasn't to destroy the evidence, but to send a message? What if every flame, every song, every scream, was part of his ritual? There was another letter, but it was never published. It was delivered privately, to a jazz musician named Leon Baptiste. And it wasn't a threat. It was a request. You play the blues like you've suffered, but I've heard real pain. If you want the screams to stop, come play for me. One song, one night, alone. Leon never told anyone where he went that night. Only that when he returned, he burned his trumpet in the river and never played again. The Axeman didn't want silence. He wanted a symphony of fear, and we gave it to him. How do you scream when the one thing missing is your voice? Some say it was the blood. Others say it was the silence. But for the Cortelli family, it was what they didn't say that haunted the most. March 21st, 1919. 2 days after the city's infamous jazz vigil, and the Axeman had vanished, or so they thought. People were dancing again. Bars buzzed. The city exhaled. But on St. Claude Avenue, in a small, crooked house with rusted shutters, a nightmare was waiting behind a whisper. Johnny and Evelina Cortelli were known for their deli, famous for roast pork sandwiches and homemade limoncello. They were quiet, traditional, the kind of family that never made headlines, until their little girl, Lena, walked barefoot into the police station, clothes soaked in blood, mouth trembling, eyes empty. She didn't say a word. She couldn't. She tried, Officer DeLance said, opened her mouth, but all we heard was air. Her tongue was gone. The night before, Lena lay curled on the couch, listening to the jazz on the radio. Her father had promised they'd be safe. Music, always music. He only comes when it's quiet, Johnny said, tuning the dial. So long as jazz lives, we live. Evelina tucked her in, kissed her temple. The air smelled of lemon peel and peppered ham. And outside, the rain began to fall. But sometime after midnight, the music stopped. Not skipped, not paused. Stopped, and something else started. Tapping, deliberate, measured, like fingers on glass, or nails on wood. Lena sat up, blinking in the dim glow from the hallway. She heard footsteps, but they were wrong. Too heavy, too slow, like someone carrying something. The door creaked open. A shadow moved across the wall. Too tall for her father, too still to be human. Then came the sound, the soft, wet thud of something dropping onto tile. She crept forward and saw her mother, slumped beside the stove, blood pooling beneath her face, her mouth wide open, but her tongue gone. Johnny lay across the threshold, eyes still open, as if staring at something he couldn't believe. No signs of a break-in, no screams, just jazz, stuck on a final note, repeating, and then silence. When they found Lena, she was holding something, a brass charm, tarnished, bent, engraved with one word. Listen. The investigation was brutal. Detectives found the axe in the kitchen, propped upright, balanced on its blade like a trophy. But no fingerprints, no footprints, no signs of struggle. And Lena, the only witness, remained mute. Doctors said it was trauma, psychogenic mutism. But the coroner said otherwise. Her tongue wasn't bitten or torn. It was cut clean, surgically, like someone practiced. The city spiraled. Who was this man? Why tongues? Was it symbolic? Ritualistic? Was the music really protection? Or part of the performance? The papers dubbed him again the maestro of murder, a killer who didn't just take lives, but orchestrated suffering. Then, a revelation, hidden in the corners of old police records, a case from 1897, a string of murders eerily similar, victims in their beds, jazz nowhere near the scene, and in each case, the tongues were taken, but that killer had been caught, or so they claimed. Joseph Torelli, an Italian violinist turned street preacher. He confessed to 7 killings, said voices told him to do it. But when they asked him why the tongues, he just smiled. Because music is louder when you silence the truth. Their voices held secrets. I just took the noise away. He died in the Jackson Asylum, burned alive in his cell. But no one ever found who set the fire, or why. On the wall beside his corpse, someone wrote a single phrase, in ash. I never played alone. Now, nearly 20 years later, the Axeman's crimes echoed the same pattern, and people started whispering, what if it wasn't a new killer? What if the music was keeping something old from waking? Detectives returned to Lena, desperate for answers. They brought photographs, recordings, played jazz, blues, even the sounds of footsteps. Nothing worked, until a detective named Wren played something different. The sound of a violin played backwards. Lena's hands began to shake. She pointed to the speaker, then slowly lifted her finger to her lips and wrote on the paper, "He doesn't kill for silence. He kills for the pause." What does that mean? The pause between what? Breaths? Songs? Or screams? And how did she know? All we know is this. The axeman left the axe behind, but he took more than lives. He took their words, their ability to warn us, to tell the truth. Because sometimes silence isn't safety. It's a grave. How do you explain a place that bleeds? Not metaphorically, not emotionally, literally. That's what the officers kept asking as they stood inside 414 Dauphine Street, ankle deep in something warm, thick, sticky. Not water, not wine, but blood. Blood from a house with no bodies inside. It started with a scream, but not from the victim, from the neighbor across the alley. There's something coming out of the walls. It was April 1st, 1919. April Fool's Day, except this was no joke. And the Axeman had returned. The Rubidoux' house, 3 stories tall, shuttered windows, overgrown ivy creeping like veins along the brick. Mrs. Delphine Rubidoux, 53, lived alone, widow, piano teacher, known for her peach preserves and deep Catholic guilt. That night, she was expected at choir practice. She never arrived. The choir waited, then called. No answer. At 8:47 p.m., a neighbor noticed something odd, dark streaks dripping from the front steps. He assumed oil, maybe wine, until the copper smell hit him, and the door creaked open, on its own. Detectives would later describe the scene as unnatural, not violent, not chaotic, just wrong. No signs of struggle, no overturned furniture, no broken locks, but every floorboard on the first level was soaked with blood, as if the house itself was leaking. And in the center of the parlor, on the old woven rug, a single object lay perfectly centered, a sheet of music, handwritten, titled simply, Silencio. Flashback. 3 weeks earlier, Mrs. Rubidoux had written a letter to the Times-Picayune. It was never published, but the draft was found in her desk drawer. I believe the Axeman is not a man at all. He is something passed on. Each victim is a note, each scene a verse. He's composing something. I've seen the pattern in the murders. He kills to silence a sound that hasn't happened yet. Investigators brought in forensics. They checked for leaks, broken pipes, rodents, anything. But the blood didn't come from above. It rose from beneath. They pried open the floorboards, and what they found wasn't just structural decay. It was a burial site. Beneath the parlor, they uncovered bones. Not one body, dozens, stacked, layered, some no more than fragments, some fresh, and some with their jaws torn open, tongues missing, again. But the true horror? None of these bodies matched any known missing persons. Not even in neighboring parishes. Not even beyond Louisiana. These weren't the Axeman's recent victims. These were old, ancient, some carbon dated back decades. And next to them, in the dirt, a rusted music box, still intact, still playing. But the melody? Backwards. Dr. Malin, the city coroner, examined the blood. His report stated, human, typo, AB, B negative, multiple sources, impossible to trace, blood that doesn't belong to any living member of this household. So what was the Rubidoux' house? A slaughterhouse? A ritual site? A sanctuary? Or worse, an instrument? As the story spread, panic returned to the streets. But this time it wasn't fear of music. It was fear of silence. People kept radios on during meals, sang lullabies until their children fell asleep. Some even nailed jazz records to their doors, like wards against evil. Because the idea took root, the Axeman wasn't choosing victims at random. He was following a composition, a twisted, unfolding opera of death. Then, the second anomaly. No one could find Mrs. Rubidoux' piano. Neighbors recalled hearing her play it every afternoon. She taught 5 students a week. The parlor had indentation marks where it once stood. But now, gone. Not sold. Not stolen. Just gone. But that wasn't the only thing missing. In her bedroom, inside a cedar box, detectives found a stack of letters from a man named Luca Valente, a jazz pianist, last seen alive in 1904, declared dead after disappearing in the French Quarter. One line from his final letter stood out. When I met him, he wasn't looking for blood. He wanted sound. He said music binds him. Silence frees him. Delphine, don't stop playing. Not ever. So, did she stop? Or did someone make her stop? The coroner listed her as missing, presumed dead. But no body was ever found. No blood matched hers. No trace of her ever leaving the house. Just the bleeding walls, the vanished piano, the silence that followed. And then came the final detail, something the city tried to bury. 3 days after the incident, a local child wandered onto the Rubidoux' porch. Drawn by curiosity, he said he thought he heard music, but not from inside the house, from beneath it, and carved into the doorstep, as if etched by a blade. Every song ends with silence. What if that's what he's counting on? That no matter how loud we play, how many records we spin, how long we sing, the silence will come. And when it does, so will he. Can a street be haunted? Not just cursed, but carved into the rhythm of something that kills? Because on Chartres Street, on a night thick with fog and jazz, an entire block went still, at the exact same time. No lights, no footsteps, no music, just breathless, synchronized silence. And then, the screaming started. April 7th, 1919. 1 week after the Rubidoux' house bled. 3 weeks after Clara watched him dance in the flames. And 24 days since the Axeman's letter warned the city. Play jazz, or face the consequences. But that night, even jazz couldn't save them. Because the Axeman wasn't targeting a home anymore. He was orchestrating a massacre. And the first note was silence. Chartres Street, 6:02 p.m. A wedding band warmed up outside the Café Bellamy. Crowds laughed, drank wine, danced barefoot on the bricks. Across the street, streetlights buzzed awake. A saxophonist played St. James Infirmary on the corner. Children tossed pennies in puddles, chasing them like gold. Everything pulsed with life. Until 6:47 p.m. That's when every phonograph stopped. Every candle flickered. Every laugh caught in a throat. Power outage? No. The rest of the quarter stayed bright. Only one street, one block, went dead. Mrs. Henrietta LaSalle was the first to notice. She lived on the 3rd floor above the florist. She said she looked down and saw everyone frozen, like a stage play mid-scene. No one moving, except a man in black walking between them, tapping each door with the flat end of an axe. Then came the lights, not electric, flames, orange, slow flickering, not from torches or lamps, but from inside the pavement. The cracks between cobblestones began to glow like embers, and then they bled. Not a metaphor, not exaggeration, actual blood, rising up from between the bricks, pooled in doorways, dripped from storefront awnings, spelled something no one wanted to read. A signature. Police were overwhelmed. Dispatchers logged 19 simultaneous calls, all from different buildings on the same block, all reporting the same thing. We hear footsteps in the walls. The record won't stop spinning backwards. There's a man playing piano, but we don't own a piano. Detectives arrived at 7:11 p.m. No break-ins, no visible suspect, but 3 bodies, each in a different home, each left sitting in a chair, mouth sewn shut with wire. No blood splatter, no signs of struggle, just eyes wide open, and sheet music scattered at their feet. All the same title. The silence between notes. One victim was only 13, a boy named Theo, known for beating rhythms on tabletops at school. When they opened his mouth at autopsy, they found his tongue intact, but his eardrums had burst. The second victim, Mrs. Eloise Gardner, had been a classically trained opera singer. She retired decades earlier, but her diary showed recent entries about hearing music in her sleep. Not real music, she wrote, like someone practicing, dragging a bow across violin strings out of tune. Sloppy, angry, like he's trying to fix something broken. The third victim? A man named Jules Devereux, a failed composer who once claimed to hear stories in silence. Police found his wall covered in chalk. He'd written the same line over and over. He's not coming for silence. He's coming for the pause between sounds. But what does that mean? The pause between sounds? Between words? Between screams? And why now? The forensics team noticed something else. All 3 victims were found in a perfect triangle, measured down to the inch, door to door to door. And in the center of that triangle, on the exact center of the block, a drain, clogged, with something that looked like sheet music, written on skin. The city tried to explain it. A tragic coincidence. A freak ritual killing. They shut down Chartres Street, called it unsafe, blamed gas lines. But those who lived nearby, they whispered different things. That they still hear music, but only when the clocks stop. And one man, an old record store owner named Mr. Bechet, swore something that chilled even the detectives. I stayed late that night, heard someone humming outside. I went to the window, saw no one. But every record in the shop flipped itself, all at once, started spinning backwards. Same note, over and over. And underneath the sound, I heard breathing, not mine. After that night, people stopped trying to survive through jazz. They tried to outsmart him. Church bells rang through the night. Air raid sirens were repurposed to fill the pauses. Some even left radios playing white noise while they slept. Because the pattern was becoming clear. He doesn't strike during chaos. He waits for the stillness, for the pause. And that's when he comes. Not through doors, not through windows, but between the seconds, between the breaths, between the sounds. Because if music is his cage, silence is his key. Some sounds lead you home. Others lead you somewhere you were never meant to go. Detective Matthias Bellamy believed in patterns, in facts, in the kind of logic that could tame even the darkest case. But the Axeman didn't care for logic. He didn't leave patterns. He left movements. And Matthias? He made the mistake of thinking it was music he could follow, when really it was bait. April 14, 1919. It had been nearly a month since the first official jazz night, and 6 days since Chartres Street bled in silence. Matthias was assigned to the case personally by Chief Morelli, because unlike the others, he didn't believe this was supernatural. Killers are men. Men bleed. Men slip. And eventually men confess. He was wrong. But he didn't die because he was wrong. He vanished because he followed a sound that didn't belong to the living. It started with a phonograph. A cracked one, seized from the Roubideau's house. Technicians couldn't get it to play. But one night, Matthias brought it home. At exactly 2:44 a.m., it began spinning on its own. Scratched. Garbled. But underneath the static, a melody, barely a few bars. And then a voice, distorted, whispering, "You've heard me before, now follow me." He should have thrown it away, smashed it, reported it. But he didn't, because deep down, Matthias didn't want to solve the case. He wanted to be the one who ended the story. So he followed the melody. Matthias traced the tune across locations, played it near witnesses, compared it to known compositions. One older musician, a blind trumpeter named Roscoe Venn, froze when he heard it. "That's not a song," he whispered. "That's a summons. My brother used to play that before he disappeared." Matthias dug deeper, learned of a place few mentioned aloud. The Crescendo Vault, a crumbling warehouse along the river, once used by musicians to store instruments, sheet music, and stories they didn't want to take home. But it had been abandoned for decades, closed after a mysterious fire in 1899 that claimed no lives, but left the air inside permanently scarred. Locals said the building hissed at night, that it breathed, and that if you walked past it with no sound, you could hear footsteps that didn't match your own. Matthias went alone, took his service revolver, took a tape recorder, left a note on his desk that read, "I don't think he's behind us anymore. I think he's ahead, waiting." He entered the vault at 9:17 p.m. The tape recorder captured everything, until it didn't. Begin audio transcript. Vault tape. 1 second. Ambient static. Footsteps. Soft echo of dripping water. Matthias. Smells like ash. Something rotted. Click. He flicks on a flashlight. Matthias. Floors warped. Something's been dragged. Strings maybe. Music box chimes in the distance. Matthias. Jesus. That's the tune again. But it's not playing. It's humming. Pause. A second set of footsteps begins. Matthias. Who's there? Footsteps stop. Matthias. Say something. Rustling. Wooden creak. Matthias. You following me? Then silence. Then the faint, distorted melody again. And then a whisper. Not his. Ooh? Pause. Recorder screeches. Cuts. End of audio. Matthias was never seen again. No blood. No body. No signs of struggle. Just his tape recorder, placed neatly on the floor beside a broken metronome, ticking backward. The warehouse was sealed, declared unstable. But the workers who went in afterward swore the same thing. It's like it knew we were coming. The light bulbs exploded when we stepped inside. There were handprints on the piano, but no dust disturbed around them. Later, a letter arrived at police headquarters. Typed, no return address. It read, you cannot find me in the sound. I live in the rest between notes. He followed the melody, but he forgot the silence. One song left. One pause to go. The letter was signed. It was the first time since his initial threat that the Axeman had directly spoken to the police again. But this time he wasn't promising violence. He was counting down. Bellamy's disappearance broke the department. Even the most rational officers started carrying pocket radios and harmonicas. Detectives left music playing on loop in their cars, in their homes, even in the morgue. Not because they believed in jazz as protection anymore, but because they feared the silence that came after. People began to notice strange things, metronomes moving on their own, sheet music rearranged overnight, whispers in elevator shafts, and always the same phrase, scratched onto mirrors, windows, chalkboards. One song left. What song? What ending? What comes after the silence? And if Matthias isn't dead, where is he? And more importantly, is he still listening? Because sometimes, the deeper you listen, the more you hear things you were never meant to find. If you knew the last sound you'd ever hear was a song, would you still let it play? Would you dance? Or cover your ears and pray the silence came first? Because for New Orleans, the music didn't stop, simply ran out. April 17, 1919. 4 days after Detective Matthias Bellamy vanished inside the Crescendo Vault. 2 days since the Axeman's final message. One song left. One pause to go. People waited. Breath held. Doors locked. Phonographs spinning endlessly through scratched jazz loops. And yet, nothing came. Not a scream. Not a murder. Not a whisper. Until the music itself began to rot. That morning, radio towers across the city failed. Not from weather. Not from power surges. Technicians said something in the airwaves, something inside the frequencies, was distorting the signals. Jazz records began skipping. Phonographs melted their own needles. Saxophones warped, brass bending inward as if choking on breath. Even street performers complained. Their instruments sounded wrong. One cornet player said it best. I tried to play, do you know what it means, to miss New Orleans? But what came out was something else. Like the notes rearranged themselves. Like they wanted me to say something I didn't understand. And beneath it all, the silence grew. Church bells rang off-key. Choirs lost harmony mid-song. Children forgot nursery rhymes they'd known since birth. People reported hearing music in their teeth, in their pipes, in the groan of wooden floors. But it wasn't music anymore. It was something unraveling. Then came the girl. 9-year-old Juliette Arnaud disappeared from her bedroom the night before. But she returned the next day, walking barefoot into St. Augustine Church at sunrise. dress torn, fingers bruised, humming. Not a lullaby, not a hymn, but the axeman's melody. She didn't speak until she climbed the pulpit stairs, stood at the microphone meant for Sunday sermons, and whispered a sentence that silenced the entire congregation. "He's not coming for us anymore. We're already inside the song." What did she mean? Her mother wept. Her father begged the priest to call doctors. But Juliet wouldn't answer any questions. She just held a crumpled piece of paper, a music sheet. The title? Finale, for those who listened too long. That night the city blacked out. Not from storm, not from sabotage, from inside. One by one districts fell dark, as if something walked through them and switched the lights off with its breath. And as the darkness spread, people heard it, the final note. Some said it was a violin. Others swore it was a piano, but every note sounded wrong. Bent, warped, crooked, like the air itself was cracking. Then came the silence. Not just quiet, true absence. No wind, no birds, no clocks ticking, no voices, just nothing. For 7 full minutes, New Orleans forgot how to make sound. Dogs barked with no voice. Doors slammed in silence. Even sirens flashed. Mute. People fell to their knees in panic. Mothers clutched their children, sobbing without noise. Lovers screamed with mouths open wide. But no cries came. It was as if the world pressed its finger to their lips and shushed them forever. Then, just as suddenly, one final sound. A single, sharp note. From nowhere, and everywhere. The kind of note that makes your bones ache. That sits in your chest like an echo you can't cough out. And after that, nothing again. No more deaths. No more letters. No more sightings of a man in black with an axe and a melody. Just a city, suspended. But the fear didn't leave, because a new rumor grew. That the axeman had finished his composition. That he wasn't trying to kill people. He was trying to complete something. A song made from blood. A symphony of screams. A final arrangement, written in victims and pauses and silence. And now that it was done, he didn't need to kill anymore, because he had them. All of them. Some believe the final note trapped souls, like grooves etched into a cursed record. That anyone who hums his tune, or hears the wrong note in a familiar melody, lets him back in. To this day, musicians in New Orleans report strange things. Trumpets that play notes they didn't finger. Metronomes that refuse to stop. Voices whispering between bars of rest. And sometimes, a single figure watching them, swaying gently, waiting for the song to pause. As for Detective Bellamy, his tape recorder reappeared, delivered in a plain box, to the front steps of police headquarters. Inside a final recording. Begin tape, finale. Soft static, footsteps, a whistle off-key, a child laughing faintly, Bellamy distant. He's not chasing me. He's playing. He's composing me. I think I'm the bridge between movements. I feel my ribs humming. He's tuning me. When the song ends, don't listen to the silence. That's where he lives now. Screech, distorted brass, then a final, sharp note. Like a violin string snapping. Tape ends. No one saw Bellamy again. But on the tape's casing was a carved signature. Now, it said that if you sit in certain alleyways in the quarter, in the dead of night, and close your eyes, you'll hear a note. Just one. And if you hum it, something will hum back. So tell me this, do you think this was a ghost? Or something worse? Was the axeman ever real? Or did we give him life, with every breath between songs? Comment below. What do you think happened to Detective Bellamy? Was this music, or a message? And if this story haunted you, subscribe to the Veil of Secret, for more terrifying true tales that slip between the cracks of what we know. Because next time, you might be the silence he steps into.